Professor Das, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Central University of Jharkhand, esteemed colleagues from this very university, the faculty colleagues and deans and the various officials, uh, the students and scholars, and very esteemed guests. This is my first visit to this university. I mean, though I live in the same city, and this happens to be a central university, I never had the opportunity of visiting your university until today, and would not have been a better day to visit than today, being the very auspicious day of the birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda and also the National Youth Day. I was very thrilled to receive flower or some. Generally, when you come late in the class, you get a reprimand from the teacher. But the VC kind of already allowed me, and not only that, they gave me flower and shawl, so I'm very honored. I certainly would like to share some of my thoughts about who, in my opinion, is possibly the best icon in front of the youth today. And I firmly believe that there cannot be any better example before the youth of this country today. And like never before, this occasion should also remind us about a very sacred duty that all of us have for this very nation. But before I actually broach upon or pay my homage to Swamiji, I would like to first invite all of you to think for a while about a very important issue in front of the nation today. We are all aware that India is one of the mighty economic powers in the whole world today, the fifth largest economy in the world. And coupled with that, we are the largest population and the youngest population. Now, it only means that if this country boasts about any resource today, then certainly the human resource would be the most eminent of them. And this is no wonder we often hear the phrase quite often, demographic dividend. Now, what does it actually mean? It means that if you compare ourselves with the Scandinavian nations, the average age there is over 50. More than half the population receive pension by virtue of the wealth generated by less than half of the population. So in other words, it's absolutely an unenviable situation where majority of the people are already superannuated, retired, and the rest of the population, which is less than half, they provide service, create wealth to support the elders. In India, we see just the reverse. And that's an advantage we really quite understand. More than 800 million people below the age of 35. That means they're just embarking upon their professional career. Many of us would have heard often the Honorable Prime Minister reminding us that India must emerge by 2047 a developed nation, Viksit Bharat. Now what does it mean? It means that it's not just the economic indices of per capita income or human development index and so on. It essentially means that everybody is well taken care by the society and the government to an extent that we can compare ourselves to be at par with the rest of the nation. But if we look back at the until about early part of the 18th century, India was among the topmost nations in the world and also the richest nation in the world. Not just because India had lots of gems and spices and silk or agricultural products. It's because India also was considered to be the knowledge capital of the whole world. And this for the first time, who brought to the Western world, who revealed this very important truth very forcefully and very convincingly to the Western world was none other than Swami Vivekananda. We all are aware that 1883, when he was invited to speak at the Parliament of Religion, he mesmerized the entire audience, not just by his very first, we often hear about that, the very first address or the way he started his speech by saying, sisters and brothers of America. But because the Western world at that point of time used to believe that India was a nation riddled with poverty, famine, various types of diseases, lot of internal strife, and it all happened within about 100 years from 1557, so 1757. So until early 1700, a nation which was one of the richest, which is why the travelers, traders, the scholars would come from China, from Middle East, from even Europe, in boats to explore what was India. Within about 150 years from then, India turned to be one of the poorest and having enormous amount of issues, internal problems and so on. It all happened because the rulers at that point of time had no intention of societal benefit or relief, but to exploit the nation. Now, if you look at the period from 1860s, let's say, 61, Tagore was born, 63, 1863, Narendra Datta was born. From the, during this period, 1860s until about 1940s, is often considered by the historians as sort of a golden period or sort of a renaissance period. Now, it so happened, I mean, it's just a coincidence that the capital of the country, the British India at that point of time, happened to be Calcutta. And so Calcutta, the population got exposed to various emerging thoughts, various modern thoughts, various new cultures and practices, and most importantly, the recent exploits of scientific development from the whole world to the Britishers. The Britishers were primarily here for exploiting, but the population that governed was not even a fraction of the rest of the population, who all were either teachers or in various functions of the society. So the society benefited a lot, and because of this exposition, people who lived in Calcutta, by the way, at that point of time, who lived in Calcutta were not only Bengali-speaking people. They were, in the whole of the eastern region, this was only one center, and people from all over the neighboring regions, from Bihar, Odisha, the current, all these states, people used to consider Calcutta as their seat of learning and also for professional earning. So Vivekananda grew up alongside, if I can name a number of them, but just a few of them. Imagine a period when all these people are living together. Jagdish Chandra Bose, Rabindranath Tagore, Ramakrishna Paramahans, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Michael Madhusudan Dutt, Keshav Chandra Sen, many more. I can go on. Each one of them were pioneers by their own right and their own field. So Vivekananda was growing up as a youth who initially was fortunate to have a very rich lawyer father, an attorney, who for a while went outside the Bengal for the call of the profession, lived in Raipur. In fact, some of you probably may know that the Raipur airport is named after him, primarily to commemorate that Vivekananda lived as a child and went to school for a while in Raipur. Then he came back. Unfortunately, his father suddenly died when he was in his early 20s. So overnight, a young man who was growing along in a family of, he had, he was one of the 9 siblings. It was a large family. Vivekananda's grandfather was a very learned scholar, a scholar in Sanskrit and Persian, but his grandfather actually left the family at a very young age and became a monk, a sannyasi. So Vivekananda's father was a very well-known lawyer of that time and was fairly rich. So a lot of people used to come to their house quite often for various religious or social functions, and Vivekananda also had the opportunity of mixing with a lot of people. And he was undoubtedly the brightest of the lot and a very inquisitive guy. Now I said this just a half an hour ago to my young friends in VIP Minister. I said, look, if there is one um, attribute or one characteristic I wish you should imbibe from Swami Vivekananda, I won't say his penchant for religion or his scholarship of knowledge in Vedanta. Those, of course, are very, very exemplary. But I would like every youth of this country to imbibe one quality which he became what he became, was his inquisitiveness. And I'll share one or two anecdotes with you. Some of you might have read history and might already be knowing, but no harm in repeating those. One day the servant found him trying the hookahs, the smoking pipes, in the drawing room, and no one was around. So the servant realized that this guy is up for some mischief, and in fact, his mother used to say, I don't know whether it's true or not, his mother used to say that, I prayed to Lord Shiva for a Shiva, and he gave me a monkey. So he was a notorious, not notorious, I mean a mischievous boy, because he wouldn't follow any diktat. He always ask a very relevant question, no stupid question. So his very relevant question was, why are there 6 different hookahs? And these 6 are meant for the Christians, the Buddhists, the Brahmins, the Muslims, and various other people of various faith, because nobody would, use the same hookah. He said, I would like to know whether I'm losing my religion. जात चला जाता है ना, अगर किसी और के हुक्का में आप पी रहे तो आपका जात चला जाएगा. That was a common belief. He said, I want to try whether I'm losing my faith or not. So he was reprimanded as usual, so he just kind of let it go. He goes to Ramakrishna not for any religious purpose. He had a golden voice. He was trained classical singer. And Ramakrishna was very fond of Kali Kirtan. So he heard from somebody. Actually, I don't know how far it's true. Apparently, the one who introduced Vivekananda to Ramakrishna Paramhans, you'll all be surprised, was his Christian teacher in Scottish Church, or maybe presidency. By then he would have moved to presidency. Apparently, he was explaining what is trance and was teaching Shakespeare's some piece, and at that point of time, by the way, Vivekananda was a very good student. I mean, he was the topper in his entrance to Presidency College. He studied obtained a first division BA degree, was a fairly good student, and in fact, he went beyond his normal realms of studies. He mastered Sanskrit, he read Vedas and Upanishad by himself. He also translated Western thoughts about Indian philosophy from English to Bengali, and so on and so forth. So he, when his father died, he overnight became a very poor man, very awfully poor, not having enough to pay the fees. He was looking for a job, and this professor said that if you want to know what is trance, then you should go and see. There's a Hindu worshipper in Dakshineshwar. You should go and see him. And that's how he landed up there. But then Ramakrishna invited him to sing, and he sang, and he saw Ramakrishna going into a trance. For a while, he was speechless. tears started rolling out of his eyes, and he was looking at a blind face, as if he was looking at someone but not actually looking at that sort of a strange situation. So he waited. So then Ramakrishna came back to his senses, and then he continued saying that I heard through your song I could relate myself with goddess Kali. He said, I'm here. I need some job. I'm in a very financially poor state, so I need a job. He said, you go and ask it from the goddess. That, what will she do? That, have you ever spoken to her? He said, I speak to Ma Kali almost every day. Have you ever seen God? He said, yes, I see God like I'm seeing you. And that was the turning point. Ramakrishna said that this man must be bluffing. So he said, okay, I'm going to try it myself. Because he wouldn't take any lame excuses. So he himself went and prayed with him. So Ramakrishna sent him thrice. Each time Vivekananda went to the goddess and prayed. He wanted to seek a job. He ended up praying for wisdom, knowledge, for revelation, the truth. And every time he comes back and Ramakrishna asks him that, did you ask for a job? He said, no, I forgot. Then try again. After the third time, he started suspecting this man must be having some magical power. I want a job and every time I go and do something else. So then he realized that there is an inner soul and an inner eye, which actually, something very similar to what the Advaitavad says, that the Atman and Brahman should merge. He said, probably there is something inside me which is able to see and seek something beyond which is being seen all around me. So then the journey of this man starts. Ramakrishna dies, he collects his disciples, decides to leave the familyhood, creates an order. They decide they take the vouch to leave the life of the monks, renouncing all worldly attractions. Even before that, he travels. Today, if you want to do something good for the country or the nation or the society, we tend to feel that, what are the ways? And so before you can think of doing something good for others, you should know who the others are. And what did Vivekananda do? He traveled barefooted, without any money or support or anyone around him, all alone. And traveled the length and breadth of the country, ended up on the rocks of the Kanyakumari, near Kanyakumari. The fishermen discovered him, and he was about to almost die because he traveled all these days, months. But he was seeking the truth in himself, and he wanted to know the people for whom he wanted to do some good. So that was the level of devotion he carried. For me, Vivekananda was not a religious leader. To me, Vivekananda was more of a social reformer, and more importantly, who aroused the soul of the nation. I don't find any other person who would have touched the lives of so many millions like he did, not just in this country, even abroad. He addressed the Parliament of Religion, and after that he lived almost 2 years or more in the North America and then Europe. Traveled length and breadth. Created 2 Vedantic societies on the soil of the US, which still exist. The man never knew anything about the soil of the US before. So that Adi Shankaracharya lived at 800 AD and spoke about Advaita Vedanta Bhava. And that India's psyche and religious soul was so rich that the rest of the world was minion compared to that, was brought to a very great extent to the rest of the world by this young man who lived only 39 years. If you look around, can you imagine that someone who starts as a son of a rich family, in a rich family, loses his father in his early 20s, and lives just another 17, 18 years, but he does so much in those 17 or 18 years that he is revered and remembered all over the globe, not just by the Hindus, but all those who care for humanity. So there cannot be any better icon than Swami Vivekananda before the nation today. And he couldn't have been more relevant than today, when the country is trying to regain its rightful place as a knowledge leader, not just a leading nation by virtue of number of missiles and nuclear warfare warheads we have, but by virtue of earning respect and acceptability. But what remains to be quite understood and appreciated, in my opinion, is that to him there was no division. The division was only in the outer exercises. Vivekananda didn't know any narrow sectarianism, didn't practice any divisivity or division. He wanted to embrace the entire humanity, and he had no problem with any religion or any faith, because he always believed, and that's what all scholars would always say, that eventually we all converge onto the same destiny when we discover the relationship between the God, my creator, and I. The way I look at that creator may vary from region to region, country to country, or continent to continent, but eventually we discover the same truth. So I would especially request my young friends here to please read the life of Vivekananda, and you'll see that this is an example which not only makes you feel happy, but make you also feel emboldened, empowered. That there's a lot that I can do, provided I can discover the inner strength in me. The country and its future obviously depends on the youth. And the youth has to find a conviction and a direction. There cannot be any better icon than Swami Vivekananda in that direction. Thank you very much.